Today I'm building this torsion box style assembly table and workbench. The torsion box aspect of it gives me a dead flat surface to work from. The workbench aspect of it has a set of dog holes in it along with a vise to give me great work holding capabilities. All four sides have an electrical outlet in it for quick and easy access to some electricity when I need it. And the workbench rolls around on casters that retract on this flip up mechanism so I can move it around when I need to. So let's get started. I've cutting up some plywood to build the torsion box. Alright, so I ripped this sheet of plywood in half to make it more manageable. And I have my fence set up so it's a little wider than what I actually need for the dividers in the torsion box. I'm doing this because I want to be able to run each piece across the jointer and then rip it perfectly parallel, all at the exact same width. So as I rip all these strips off of this one piece, if one gets a little bit off and gets a little crooked, then that edge gets put back against the fence and then that telegraphs off all the way to the end to where that last piece is even way further off. So ripping them a little bit wide, jointing each edge, and re-ripping them will ensure that I have a perfect width on each piece. So now that I have a straight edge jointed on one side, I'm going to put that edge against the fence and a feather board to keep it tight against the fence. And this will help ensure that I can get it just as perfectly straight as I can, so I should end up with a nice flat torsion box. Alright, so my center supports for the torsion box are a little bit too long to cut at the table saw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square one end off at the chop saw and then turn them around and set up a stop block at that other end so I can cut them all to the exact same length. Alright, to create the smaller support pieces for the web for the torsion box, I have a stop set up and I'm just going to square off this end, turn it around, and then cut them all out. I have 50 or 60 of those to cut out, so hopefully this will make quick work of it. Alright, now it's time to do a little bit of assembly. So since my current workbench is not perfectly square and flat, I'm going to use some shims as I go to shim everything nice and level and flat. That way I don't have to worry about the workbench below throwing anything off. So I'm just going to get started here and start assembling. Alright, I'm going to use my webs as spacers to space them out so that way they all space out evenly. Put a little glue on here. Make sure I'm flushed up. Flush up the other side using my wedge. Alright, pop these guys out. Move to the next side. And then we'll just go on down from there. Alright, since this plywood is not exactly 3/4 of an inch thick, and there might have been some accumulative air as I came across, I planned on this one being a little bit different width than the rest of them. So I haven't cut these ones yet, so I'm going to take an exact measurement and then set my stop to cut these all the same for this last row. Alright, so the box grid is pretty much done. I alternated them just enough so I could get the nail gun in there to fire this nail, but still there's a little bit of a cross support there between each web. So hopefully that'll give me a nice sturdy torsion box. Alright, so I have this steel tube that's about 3 inches thick that's going to be used for a future project coming up, but I'm going to use it to set up my torsion box so it's nice and flat. So when I glue the skins on, it'll be ensured that it's nice and flat. Gluing the skins on top of the web frame is really what gives the torsion box all its strength. So I have 3 of these guys. I'm going to space them out across the table. They're nice and flat. I'll start gluing my tops and bottom sheets on. I want to take this vise off the old bench and put it on the new one. So I'm going to use some just scrap 2x4 material to fill in some spaces in the grid. So that way I have a place to drop some dog holes in and hold fasts. Alright, the plywood that I bought was about an 1/8 inch wider than a 4x8 sheet, so it's just a little bit wider. So I'm just going to take a trim router and just run it along here to trim that flush. Alright, so now I'm going to build the base and the legs for this. So I got my fence set up because I'm going to rip this sheet of plywood down a little less than halfway so it's more manageable. Alright, I'm just going to rough cut these just a little bit oversized. I can get 3 legs that are about 30 inches or so long out of this. Then I'll square them up at the table saw and I'll set a stop to make sure that they're all the exact same length, so when I assemble the legs they'll go together perfectly. Alright, so I have a stop block set up on the fence so that way when I start to cut it'll pass past that and not get the workpiece pinched between the fence and the saw blade here, potentially causing kickback. But first, do one cut at the end to square it all off, and then I'll flip it around and set my stop to cut it to the exact length. Alright, I have a sacrificial fence set up here. I got it clamped to my table saw fence with the blade buried in it, so it protects my fence. I set the blade up so it's the width of the plywood. I'm going to just run a dado on each side of my wider strips, and then the narrower strips will complete the table leg. Alright, so let's glue it up. I'm going to get some glue on my rabbets here. Alright, my shop floor is not anywhere near level, so I want to add some adjustable feet levelers to this. They're pretty heavy duty, so I want a little extra meat for the screws to bite into. So I'm just going to glue this block in there, some more surface thickness to bite those bolts into. Alright, now I'm setting up to rip some stock for the apron to go around the table underneath to help support the torsion box and also help add some rigidity to the legs. Alright, so I have the aprons cut that are going to tie to the legs. I decided that I want to put an electrical outlet in each side of the table so I could just quickly plug a tool in and not have to drag extension cords around. So kind of cobbled together this jig, and it fits the shape of the outlet nice and tight. The center line on it, and mark the center location of the apron. I'm just going to double stick tape it down, or then use a router with a pattern bit in it to cut that guy out. Alright, to make sure my aprons are securely attached to my legs and they're nice and strong, I'm going to screw and glue them. So I'm just going to start out with pre-drilling some countersunk holes. Alright, to attach the base to the top, I'm just going to use standard pocket hole screws. Space them out all the way around, and I think that should be pretty sufficient. If it becomes not, then I'll put some glue blocks behind here and glue it all together. But I want to be able to take it apart just in case I need to move it someday. Alright, I'm just going to use a torsion box as an assembly table. That's what I designed it for, but to do the final assembly on the legs. Alright, so my electrical box will slide in there, and I'm going to rip a piece that'll be the full length here. Stand up here to attach the box to, and then I'll cap it with this guy that I've already ripped. And this will just be screwed on there so I can access the wire if I need to in the future. Alright, so I'm just going to countersink a few screw holes here. I'm going to drill some holes in the legs for the wire to go through to wire up all the outlets. Alright, so I've glued a backer board there just to space the box out. And let's just screw the box into there. Alright, with the internet being the internet, I didn't go into any detail on wiring this up, so if you are going to build a workbench and you want to integrate wire into or electricity into your workbench, please be sure to follow all your local building codes and safety codes and do it in a safe manner. Consult an electrician if you need to. I will have plans available for the rest of the workbench on my website, but it will not include a wiring diagram. Alright, I want to make sure this workbench is movable, so I'm going to use a technique I saw on the New Yankee Workshop where these casters just flip down and engage when you want to move it, and then flip up when you want the bench to sit sturdy. Alright, so I'm going to find a center line here. And I'm going to use this as a spacer to space my hinge off the edge. Just grab a piece of plywood there. Alright, now I'm going to attach this hinge to the toe kick of the workbench. And I've cut this piece a little short so there's some movement in there, so it can operate freely. Alright, to give me some more working room, we're just going to prop it up on this. Alright, I cut a little block with a little angle on it, and I'm going to install that right here, and this will be my support block to hold the wheels in place when they're activated. I'll do that on all four sides. I'm going to add a big bolt and washer just to add a little extra weight. Then a washer on the back side to help prevent it from pulling through. And I'll just tie a knot on this end. Alright, so when the wheels are gauged, they can just roll around. Then you pull the cord and those drop down, and now it's solid on the ground. Keep the bench a little lifted up, and we're back rolling again. All right, I got the rope tied to the bottom of the cleat so I can pull it up, and then just sent through a hole here. So that just comes up through a hole drilled in there, comes out here. I'm just going to take a washer, tie it on there so that way it doesn't go back through the hole. And I have a handle to just grab onto to pull those guys up. I've got my cover sheet on here. It's a little bit wider than the actual table itself, so I'm going to use this large drill bit. So this is like a 1/2 inch drill bit. I can't find my countersink bit, lost it somewhere in the shop, but this will work just to make a little divot so I can countersink some screws below the surface. There's just enough of a divot to conceal a screw head. Pre-drill through there. It's just below the surface so it won't scratch anything, and it's going to hold it in place. And then I'm just going to take a pattern bit to trace around this edge to make sure it's nice and flushed up to the edge of the torsion box. Alright, so to dress up the front of my workbench, I have some alder here I'm going to mill up and use it as the front of my apron. Alright, so I'm going to clamp this guy on here. Alright, so with this guy clamped on here, it's making sure that I am flush with the bottom of the bench. And then I'll just flush it up to this side. I ripped it about 1/16 of an inch higher than what the thickness of the bench is. So once I get it attached, I'm going to run my router along here and just with a flush trim bit and flush it up so that way it'll be flush on the bottom and flush on the top. Alright, what I've done here is I've laid out a grid work to drill some dog holes, and I've pulled the vise off my workbench, and I'm going to install it here, and that way I can have some pinch points to pinch wood between the dogs. Alright, I'm going to start out with a 3/4 inch Forstner bit, and that'll start me out with a nice clean hole. And since this bench is over 4 inches thick, that is going to be really painful to drill with a Forstner bit. But this will at least get me started with a nice clean hole, and then I'll switch to an auger bit and finish the hole out. Alright, so it's time to mount the vise. This is the vise mount that's going to go underneath the bench. And since it's hard to work upside down, I'm going to clamp this guy. This is my spacer to space it off the edge of the bench. So help me line it up when I stick it up underneath there. And then I'm going to stick a little double stick tape on the back to help hold it while I pre-drill all the holes. Alright, I did a little layout, and I'm going to drill the center hole. So this piece is fixed with this pin, so I'd have to take that pin out to get this out, but these guys' sidebars can come off with these bolts. So I'm going to drill the center pin We'll drop this in, line everything up, and mark these holes. That way I know everything's lined up perfectly. I'm just going to drop a drill bit in here and gently tap it to mark the hole. All right, I'm just going to transfer my center hole lines over. All right, I got pulled away from this build to get a client project done, but I did eventually get a wooden handle put on this guy. Basically, I just turned a dowel that would fit through here with a little nub on the end to keep it from sliding through. And then on the other side, I turned another nub, and that is just screwed on there once I slid it through the hole there. So the torsion box is done. It's been staying dead flat. I've been using it for 3 or 4 months now before finally getting around to editing this video, and it's working out great. It stays dead flat. Completely handy to have electricity in there and a vise on the end of it. So yeah, it has been a great tool. So if you want to build one for yourself, I'll have plans available. There will be a link in the description. Thanks for watching.